Hello everyone, welcome to ResearchHUB. In this video, we are going to learn about the journal submission process, particularly what happens to your article after you submit it. So for young scholars, PhD students and master's students, it is often unknown how the journal submission process works. What happens to the article after the article has been submitted to the journal? So I'm currently working as senior editor in 2 journals, and also I'm part of the editorial board for a few other journals, and also I've published more than 30 journal articles and book chapters so far. So I can give you some insights on what happens to your article after you submit it to a journal. So here, to tell you what really happens to your article after it has been submitted, I have picked this image from a editorial material from a journal called WMU Journal of Maritime Affairs. And if you want to look up into the article, here is the source. You can look into this article. Okay. But now I'm going to discuss this process in detail. So you see here we have 2 processes. We have an initial process and then we have a review process, right? So let us first focus on the initial process. So here you submit your article to the journal and it goes to the editor-in-chief, EIC, okay? And nowadays in most journals, before your article goes to the EIC, the journal manager will have a quick look on your article and check for plagiarism. And if you have submitted your article following the author guidelines mentioned in the journal, if you have missed any documents, for example, some journals now ask for declaration of conflict of interest. So if you haven't submitted that, the journal manager will send you back the article. Nowadays, some journals made it mandatory to submit an author credit statement. So if you haven't submitted that, they will send you back. And then you have to add that and submit again. So as soon as you submit, before it goes to editor-in-chief, normally nowadays it goes to a journal manager, okay? Who are normally not the academics, but they are the journal manager from the publisher side, from the Elsevier or Emerald, from those publisher side, okay? So normally journal manages few journals, okay? So after the initial screening of meeting the author guidelines and also plagiarism check are met by the journal manager, they will send it to the EIC, the editor-in-chief or co-editor-in-chief. Some journals have multiple co-editor-in-chiefs. So then the journal manager sends it to the most suitable editor-in-chief for your article. And as soon as the editor-in-chief receives your article, they will look into the article and make an initial decision. And here actually it is very important to make a good impression to the editor-in-chief, because some journals, they receive like thousands of articles and the editor-in-chief handles like 1,000 or 500 articles in a year. They will spend maybe maximum 5 to 10 minutes to make the initial decision, whether it will go in the next step or it will get rejected, okay? So you really have to make a good impression. You have to have a cover letter where you have to write how your article is related to this journal, how it builds on this journal's previous studies, how your article contributes to the literature. So these kind of things you have to mention in the cover letter, and that's where the cover letter plays a big role. So let's say your article didn't have any significant contribution and the editor thought it is not a good for your journal. Your article is not a good fit for the journal, then you will get the rejection, okay? Sometimes the editor might have some other further comments and they can send you back the article before sending it to review, okay? So for example, it happened with me that one of the editors told me that the article is good, the idea is good, but we need to have more sample in our data, okay, more observations in our data. So the editor told us that, okay, the paper is good, we will consider it, but please increase the sample size and send it again, okay? So it can happen also. But let's say now you pass the editorial decision, okay? The editor decided that the paper has some contribution, it fits with the journal's scope, and then they decide to pass it to the next step. So now here is the next step. It goes to the review process. Okay, so now let's focus on this part. And we will have two parts for the review process. So let's say this is the first part. Okay. And here the journal, the editor-in-chief, if it's a big journal, then they will have several associate editors. And then the editor will send your article to an associate editor. Okay. The associate editor for who has more knowledge on particular type of your article. So the editor will look into the article and try to decide which editor fits with the journal and sends to the associate editor or senior editor to handle the manuscript. Or if it's a special issue article, then goes to the guest editor to handle the manuscript. Okay, so that's one thing. And sometimes if it's a small journal or if there are not many associate editors, then the editor will send the article review himself or herself. Okay. So, and yeah. And then here in this case, if it was sent to the associate editors, they will send the paper for review. They will identify relevant reviewers. Often it's a good idea actually to list three, four suitable reviewers for your article on the cover letter. Some journals have the option where you can add them. Some journals don't have the options. But in those cases, you can add 3-4 suggested reviewers on the cover letter. Okay. And here, if the editor thinks that, okay, for some journals, there are only one editor, not many associate editors. Often it's for the journals which are small or very focused on a particular topic. Then the editor will send the papers for review himself or herself. Okay. So when it goes to review, then often the criteria is that there will be minimum 2 reviewers who will submit the review reports. Sometimes it can take long time to actually find the appropriate reviewers for your article. Sometimes I send to 25 reviewers to get 3 reviewers agree to review an article. Sometimes maybe it's only 5-7 reviewers and then 3 or 4 agrees to review the article. But it happens that sometimes I have to send 25-30 reviewers to get like 3-4 reviewers for an article. So, and also, you know, if I need 2 review reports, then I would normally like to have like say 3 or 4 reviewers agreed to review, because sometimes some of the reviewers, they agree to review but they don't submit the review reports, right? So let's say your article went for review, okay? And then what happens is that the editor gets the review report. Normally it takes 2 to 3 months, but sometimes it can take like up to 6 months. And if you do not hear from the reviewer or the editor in 6 months, then it is a good idea to write a polite reminder to the editor-in-chief or to the journal manager that I would like to know the status of my article. But don't overdo this writing to the editors and journal managers for status of your article. Don't do it too often. Every 3 months, that's maybe okay, 3 to 5 months. But don't do it like every month you send an email or every week you send an email. Don't do that, okay? So as soon as the review reports arrive to the, some cases it could be to the associate editors, okay? If I write like AE, so associate editors or senior editors, sometimes it goes to them when the journal uses the associate editors. Then the associate editor will look into the review reports, and if majority of them says a major revision or minor revision, then associate editor will write to the EIC, editor-in-chief, that okay, we give a revision here. If the associate editor sees that majority of the reviewers say that it's a rejection, then they will write to the EIC that it's a rejection. And if the EIC himself or herself was handling the paper, then they make the same decision based on the review comments. If majority gives a major revision, you get a major revision. If majority gives a rejection, then you get a rejection. Okay. So if you get rejection, then you have to prepare it, try to address some of the comments and prepare it for another journal. But most of the time actually, it is very likely that you get a rejection. When I submit an article to a journal, my initial hypothesis is that it is going to be rejected. And in the first round of revision, you never see this acceptance. It never happens. So it doesn't happen in the first round. Okay. First round, you either get rejection or you get a minor or major changes. If I get this minor or major changes, I normally celebrate it. I feel like, okay, I'm one step closer to the acceptance. And normally I would celebrate this and we'll have a beer in the evening or a glass of wine. And yeah. So I'm often happy if I get a major revision. Okay. And then when I get a major revision, then we start with this revise and resubmit process. Okay. And I have another dedicated lecture on how to revise and resubmit an article. And then you revise and resubmit the article and you send it to the associate editor or the editor-in-chief in here, right? And then they look into your revision. Sometimes if the revision is good enough, they will recommend it for acceptance themselves. Sometimes if they are not sure, then they will send it again for the review to the same reviewers, okay? And the same reviewers may give you again some minor or major revisions. Then you will resubmit it again. And then the associate editor or editor-in-chief will make a decision whether to accept it or not. Or if the reviewers say that, okay, we are happy, we accept the article, then you will get a review decision that, okay, we accept the article. So it is very common to have one round of revision. So in the first chance when you submit an article, you never get acceptance. That never happens. You normally get a major revision or reject. And in the second round revision, normally you will get a minor revision. If you really put effort in addressing all the review comments, then you are most likely to get a minor revision or an acceptance in the second round of revision. So it's very common that there will be like 2-3 rounds of revision in a manuscript in a good authentic journals. In fake journals, if you submit an article and if you pay some money, they will publish it immediately. Okay, so don't go for those fake journals. Try to find authentic journals. Now, sometimes the young scholars, we are very worried about the timeline, but how long it takes. So here, the initial process, it can take about 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, that's very common to take this process for 1 to 2 weeks. Some journals are very fast. They make a decision with if they want to reject an article, they will do it like in 3-4 days. But normally it's 1 to 2 weeks time. Okay, then finding the reviewer and sending to the reviewer, it's again 1 to 2 weeks. Okay, and after the article has been sent to the reviewer, normally most of the reviewers get about 4 weeks to 15 weeks of time to submit the revision. Okay, so minimum is 4 weeks in many journals, but maximum it could be like 15 weeks up to 3-4 months in really high rated journals where the review qualities are really top class. So in those journals, they often give like 3 months to their reviewers to submit the reviews. Okay, and after the reviews are received, to hear from the editors, it will take you, let's say, again, maybe 1 to 2 weeks in this process. Okay. So in total, you see, the whole process can take about 3 to 6 months easily for the first round. If you get a major revision and you resubmit it again, then you add again 4 to 15 weeks, depending on the journal. Okay. Because every round when the editor or associate editor sends the article for revision, they give the reviewers 1 month to 2-3 months for the reviews. Normally in the second round of revision, they give the reviewers a lower time limit. Let's say in the first round, if they have given like 15 weeks, in the second round, they would maybe give 10 weeks to the reviewers. But the journals which give like 4 weeks, they would normally give 4 weeks for each round of revision to the reviewers. Okay. So in general, in a decent journal, the whole publication process can take minimum 6 months. I have hardly seen any paper published in less than 5 months from the submission to the publication. And the normal is like 12 months. Okay. So if you submit an article in a decent journal, it takes 6 to 12 months in general, most of the time. I have publications which actually took us about 4 years in total with 4 or 5 rounds of revision. But those were like really high level journals and the reviews were really like very detailed with very nitty gritty and the paper improved a lot. Okay, so that was not a problem at all that it took 4 years. And normally when you have like few papers under review in the journals, you will have a pipeline, and then if it takes like 1 year or 6 months, it doesn't matter. Okay, you will often forget about it if you're busy with teaching and then it takes like you have 4 or 5 articles under review. then you will not really think too much about this 6 months or 12 months. And most of the articles that we publish, normally particularly in social science, it should have some impact over like 10-20 years. So if it takes 1 month, it's not really a problem in my opinion. Okay, but for medical science or like computer science, it is often crucial that the papers are published within like 2-3 months. Okay, and those journals are often very fast in medical science and in computer science. So by now, I hope that you really have a good idea about the whole journal process and what happens to your article after you submit the article. I believe you found the video useful, and you now have a very clear idea of what happens to an article after you submit to the journal. Thank you.